Howdy, boys and girls. It's Michelle. And we've been talking about body language, one of my favorite topics. So today we're going to talk about reading body language. Now, there are countless combinations to body language, and it's an individual thing. People have tells, quirks, all kinds of different, scenarios that can play out as far as non-verbal cues. So we're going to cover 4 of them, and I'm going to reenact some of that so you can see how some of this is paired together, and then you can start just watching people. Doesn't require anything but just observation to see how this plays out in your world and your work and your life with the people that you interact with on a regular basis. So the first one is interest. How do you know if somebody is interested? And I'll give you a couple series of body language movements to show that. So your head is normally leaned in. Someone's head is normally leaned in, and they could be smiling, engaged, their eyes are wider. They're looking at you, they're paying attention, and their torso is also leaning in. So that would be a good example of body language that shows interest. Conversely, there's disinterest. And what does that look like? So that could be leaning back, so maybe sitting back, not necessarily looking at you, looking away or down, hands folded in their lap, and just not engaged. That could be another example of disinterest. And then we have one of my favorites, which would be frustration or disagreement. So, what are some of the body mechanics when someone is frustrated or they disagree? That could be where they have their arms crossed. Maybe they've got their arms crossed, and they could do they look up and they do the eye roll. Oh man, that drives me nuts. So my husband does that to me a lot, and we'll be having a conversation. He might not have his arms crossed initially. He'll be listening and engaged, and then I'll say something, and he'll go, yeah, okay. And that drives me nuts, because what that says to me is, sure, do whatever you want. I don't agree with it. I think it's going to backfire. And sometimes he means that, and sometimes he doesn't. But that would be an example of disagreement or frustration. And then finally, there would be, and again, there's countless ways to pair all of these movements together. But another one would be a power pose. And so, and I think men do this more than women, although I've found that I do this, and I didn't realize that some women are intimidated by this. So it's leaning back, and maybe with one leg, you can't see it, but one leg crossed over the knee. And then it's where you put your hands behind your head. You're engaged, you're listening, you're paying attention, but that's a natural act of power. Now, what's interesting about that is some women don't like this, which I didn't realize. And so you got to be careful with that. But that is yet another example of a non-verbal cue and non-verbal communication. So we covered interest, which is leaning in, looking, present, paying attention, engaged. disinterested, which is, maybe looking down and just not paying attention. And then frustration or disagreement, eye roll, this kind of body language or behavior, and then power. So those are some of the ways that body language could materialize. 4 different ways or 4 different examples that I want to give you. And I'd like for all of you to start watching different people in groups, one-on-one, pay attention. What is it saying to you? Write it down, journal it. And so then you can start seeing, are you giving some of those cues? Is it matching up with what you're trying to say? What their body language is saying? Is it matching up with what they are saying? All really fascinating stuff. But it all plays into what we're trying to communicate, what others are trying to communicate, and what message we're sending and receiving. And with that, we will talk to you later.